Well, thank you very much. It's great to be in Texas. It's great to be here. This is a little different type of way to speak, so I will bounce around. Hopefully you'll stay with me. We'll move fast. I want to thank Ed for inviting me and Wendy to be a part of this today, but I do have to confess, when you heard the word retire, that's one thing. I don't know if that's actually started yet because of the book that I wrote, One Scoop at a Time. We've been all over the country doing a book tour. But what I told Ed and Wendy both is, unfortunately, in my journey, I'm now a resident of the state of Oklahoma where my grandchildren live, and they still wanted me to come. So I want to thank you for that. I grew up in San Antonio. I'm a Texan by heart. I have my Texas tie on. So we are living the dream being back in Texas. And if you met my grandkids, you would definitely understand the difference. When we talk about Texas, when we talk about branding, obviously, and again, very, very honored the fact that Bluebell has to be one of those few at the top of the list of iconic brands over the years, right there with Whataburger, now Buc-ee's, Dr. Pepper. And so to be in that group of brands, as if we want to call it, that's such an honor. I've never looked at Bluebell as a brand, though. I've always looked at it as a family member. I've always tried to treat it as a family member, one that you can love, one that you can be honest with, but also one that you can depend upon every time you pull it out of the freezer in hopes that there's still some left in the carton that your wife hasn't already taken from you. Branding's it's an interesting thing, especially when you talk about branding Texas. But I travel all over the country. There's been times I've been all over the world. And when you say, where are you from? And you say the United States, usually the very first thing you hear is, well, Texas? And if you say yes, then it's usually, well, how much land do you have? How many horses or cattle do you own? And so there is this mystique about the state. But there's a lot of pride, and we know that. You don't mess with Texas, for sure, and everything is bigger in Texas. And so branding is a very important part of what we do as a company and as a state and hopefully as a nation. Branding can be funny, though. It can be one of those things, if you don't necessarily handle it correctly, it can actually backfire on you. And we're seeing that firsthand with companies like Cracker Barrel, for instance, who, for whatever reason, decided to try to change their branding. And as we all know and see and are witnessing, not only the signs out front, but even what's going on in the kitchen. And why you would take an iconic brand like Cracker Barrel, and I'm not trying to be critical of them, but to take that risk. And so I want to journey through a little bit of Bluebell's story, but also try to tie in some principles that I guess that we've learned as a company, and how you can navigate through the good times, but also navigate necessarily through the not so good times. You want to stay relevant. I read yesterday as I was starting my day, we all know Sears and Roebuck. Sears was a company for, I was growing up as a kid, that's where you went. I mean, if you needed tools or you needed clothes, you went to Sears. At one point, there was 3,500 Sears and Roebucks, and now they're down to 5. So you take a brand, you take an iconic brand like Sears, and in this case, nationwide, but what happens in your journey can depend upon the success or the longevity of the success of those brands. In short, a brand isn't just a logo, it's an overall story and impression that lives in people's minds. You can buy a shirt, and it's a shirt until you put a check mark on it, and all of a sudden, we have a brand. And we have a proud shirt to now wear because I've got this check mark or whatever they want to call it, the swoosh. It's probably not a check mark. I probably should have looked that up. But it is something that we gravitate to, whether we want to admit it or not. The car we drive, the clothes we wear. But more importantly, it's an identity that you connect to. I have to start my talk about Bluebell. I'll give you a real quick, hopefully 30-second on myself. In high school, I had a girlfriend. I thought she was going to be the Mrs. Dickson. I thought this was the one. We dated for 2 years. I'm getting ready to go to college. She was a year behind me. All I know is she wanted to go to Baylor, and I just wanted to be with her. So I ended up going to a little college to finish out my what I call track career. I don't think you would call that today. And then time came for me to be with her. She would have been a freshman, I would be a sophomore. We get to Waco at Baylor, choice of hers, and we break up. And so there I find myself in Waco. I find myself at Baylor. Baylor was a tremendous school, just right up the street. This is not an endorsement. I should have said howdy. I've already blown it on my entrance. But living right down there for 20 years in Brenham, A&M obviously is very, very dear to me as well. But I found myself at Baylor, and in a marketing class, a consumer relation course, I had to find a company on how do they relate to the consumer? How do they relate to their product? And how do they change? And so I have this semester-long program or project. I go back to the apartment, I call my dad and said, I've got this project, what do you recommend? He said, I'm reading an article right now out of a magazine, let me start it over. And it was on that little ice cream company down in Brenham, Texas. Now, if you're not familiar with Bluebell, you're about where I was. Even though Bluebell started in 1907, and this is in the late 70s, Bluebell was only in the Houston and Austin markets and had just recently entered the Dallas-Fort Worth market. So it was strictly a Texas product, and it was still very, very regional. But I thought, who doesn't like ice cream? That sounds like a fun thing to do. So I went down and I got all my information, but it's really what I saw. And I have to say the culture in which I saw in those short 3 hours that I was there, that I thought, when I get ready to graduate, I'm going to go back and put an application into that company. And so I did. And so thankful now after 43 years, about a year and a half ago, I turned in my scoop. Actually, I kept it. I still use that sucker every single day. But I did retire from a tremendous company. I want to start, though, and that's my past, but what is this Bluebell and why is it so iconic? And what makes it different? What makes it special? I don't have any PowerPoint slides, but if you could see this sheet, I got this letter from a 12-year-old girl about 15 years ago now. It seemed like yesterday, and it's a ransom note. And it's the letters all cut out, and it basically says, we got your cows, and a picture of the cows at the top. Bring back cantaloupe and cream, or else. And it's a picture of a hamburger. So luckily I looked at the cows and thought, they're wearing the wrong jerseys. Okay, there's a cow joke in there for the agriculturist. It's not really a Holstein joke, but you got it. Thank you. You can travel with me. Anyway, I wrote her back and I said, these aren't our cows. I can tell because they're not smiling, and our cows are happy. So good luck with what you have. But I thought to myself, who does this? Who sits down and writes a letter with that kind of, creativity and passion? We did start in 1907 as a little butter company. We were the Brenham Creamery. Now back in the early 1900s, there wasn't transportation. There wasn't actually freezers. So we were a butter company, and about 4 years into it, we started making about 2 gallons of ice cream a day. That's the most that we could make. And when you made it, you had to eat it, or you sold it right then because there wasn't anywhere to really keep it cold. Now, you had your ice and your wooden tubs to put it in, but the community would know what flavor we were making, and they would come and buy it. In 1919, though, the company actually kind of fell on hard times, and they asked a gentleman by the name of E.F. Cruzy to come in and take it over. He was actually going to be the superintendent of the Burton schools, but he chose to come to work for Bluebell. And over the 1919 to 1951, the company continued in a small fashion making butter, but also a little bit of ice cream. In 1951, E.F. Cruzy passed away. And his 2 young sons, I want to say young, 21 and 23, or 23 and 21, Ed and Howard Cruzy actually became the managers of the little creamery. Really, Ed and Howard, who were both Aggies, very, very much entrenched into the Aggie culture. If you look at the baseball stadium, there's the name Bluebell on it. I argued with Howard and Ed over, I wanted it to be the Cruzy Stadium, but Olson Field was already there. And this is the first time ever that Bluebell put their name on any stadium of any kind of sponsorship. So the passion of A&M, and I just share that because the culture in which A&M provided to the Cruzys was the same type of culture that the Cruzys provided to the Bluebell family. So 1951, they took it over. 52, we actually started putting Bluebell Supreme ice cream. We were the Brenham Creamery Company to 36, and we changed the name to Bluebell, which was a flower that grows wild in this area, more so in the summertime. And that's purple. I don't know where the blue part came, but I wasn't there the day that person was naming that particular flower. So we became Bluebell. 51, we started putting ice cream in cartons. 1958, we stopped making butter, and we decided to go strictly into ice cream. And so during the 60s, when we entered the Houston market, that was our first experiment into really expanding outside the Brenham Giddings circle, roughly 60 miles, I would say. So then we hit that moment in time where what I would call probably the big defining moment is what you do next. When you get to a point where you can only sell what you can make, and you can only make so much, you have to think about how do we expand. Now, I call it the Shark Tank type moment. They didn't have Shark Tank back then, so Ed and Howard didn't get to go on TV. But Ed saw ahead of time that we are going to need a bigger facility to produce ice cream if we're going to continue to grow. So they had saved capital. They also reached out with debentures to shareholders that were in the community. And they also went to a Houston bank to get a loan of $1.3 million to build a new facility. They had already purchased the land way outside the city, about 2 miles from where the original creamery is. And the money that they had raised, they actually had a groundbreaking ceremony. Soon after that, Ed gets in the car to go to Houston to sign the note on the property, and the bank in Houston said they've reconsidered. They would not be loaning the money. And Ed will tell you, if he was here or alive today, that had to be the saddest day of his career. What he thought was going to happen didn't happen. So he went back and he went around to all the local banks, all around the city of Brenham, Burton, Somerville, all the way down to Sealy, and was able to convince all these small banks to go all in as well. And I think he put his house, and his brother put his house up for collateral. But that defining moment in a company is what really opened the door for what we now know as the little creamery that we still call little, even though it's grown a little. Someone asked me in a radio interview, how many acres do you have? And I said, we have at least 2, maybe 3. I'm kidding, there's quite a bit more. If you ever get a chance to go down, it's quite the facility. But that was definitely a defining moment. But let me hit on a few things between the 70s and when I came on in the 80s, and what I learned is some of the philosophical anchors that made Bluebell different than most companies. Number one is I do not remember my whole career where we sat around saying we want to be number one, we want to be number one. Now that's a normal thing to do. We do it in football, we do it in all sports, we do it in colleges, we do it in business. But in this case, we knew we were still small. So the philosophy was, instead of concentrating on being number one, why don't we concentrate on being the very best we possibly can be where we're at? Now, we're a direct store delivery company, meaning that we don't produce the ice cream, put it in a truck or transport, and ship it to another warehouse and let someone else handle it. We ship it to another one of our branch locations, and from there we have about a 60 to 80 mile circle that we call a branch distribution. Our own trucks then take it to the supermarket, and from there, if we could take it home with the consumer, we would, just because ice cream is probably the most delicate product that's in the grocery store. It's at minus 20 when you bring it in. It starts melting really around 0. So you could see, even in your home freezer, if you wonder why, boy, I get a lot of ice crystals, and this isn't time to go into why that happens. But it's because ice cream has to be kept cold. And if the quality isn't there, then you've lost. So you want to make sure that when you're selling a product or a service, you're giving it the very best that you possibly can. So some of the comments that I stay with, even to this day, and I mentioned this, I'm finding as I get older, both my quotes are getting older, and so are the celebrities that I use that have said them. That happens. But back in 1968, there was probably around 11,000 plants. Today, there's about 1,000 ice cream plants. So you can see the difference in how many manufacturers are out there. Howard Cruiser used to say, it's a cinch by the inch, hard by the yard. Now, anybody in here ever heard that? Anybody in here? See, I got, good. Y'all are from Brenham, aren't you? No, I'm kidding. A sense by the end. So what he was basically saying is, look, let's grow for the long haul. Let's not see how big we can get, how quick we can get, and do it step by step. Sense by the inch, hard by the yard. Slow growth also meant keeping and staying in line with production. That way you don't outpace yourself. And so as we grew as a company, we would add on into our facility in Brenham. Becoming number one, obviously, is in the back of everybody's mind. And when you do finally get to the point where you're making your way onto the national scene as far as your sales, obviously it's very exciting. But the focus is being the best you can possibly be where you're at. That leads us all the way up into, I guess I would say, our third defining moment. And that is what happened in 2015. Now, going into 15 prior to, and here I just said number one is not that big of a deal, but I remember in 14 as Vice President of Sales, looking at AC Nielsen data, and Bluebell in the ice cream category by itself, we had become the number one brand in the country, only in 23 states. So as rewarding as that is to say, the responsibility, though, to go with it means every location, every branch, every account, every truck, every person from start to finish has to do their job. And you have to do it every day, meaning today's a new day, and if you drop the ball, I like to think of a relay race. If you drop the baton along the way, it messes the entire thing up. Well, 2015, as y'all may or may not know, early February, we found out that we had Listeria monocytogenes in our product. It was a game changer. It was devastating. It was devastating from the fact that our consumer loyalty and everything we had built when we talk about cultivating a brand, we're talking ice cream. You know, ice cream is not supposed to be a product that has Listeria. In fact, it's a very low risk because it's a pasteurized product that when it comes in and you produce it, you put it in a -20 environment, so you shouldn't have that risk. Well, what we learned, you may not think that there is a risk there, but obviously there was. And so we literally took everything out of the facility. We took all the equipment out. We ripped up the floors. We took down the walls. We even moved the air conditioning because Listeria, if you know anything about Listeria monocytogenes, is it likes to be transit and it'll float. So if you have it coming in from your roof and your rain, if it rains or if you're even just bringing in air from outside and the air conditioner cuts on, there it goes, it's in the room. So we had to really redefine production from the time that you walked into the production facility all the way to the production floor. We had a variety of different things that you have to do to ensure that the product is safe. And then to put a bookend on the other end, when we make product every single day, every single line, we are taking samples throughout the morning and then again in the afternoon on finished product goods and sending that in to test to see if there's any Listeria before we ever send it to market. That way we've done, in our opinion, everything we possibly can to assure you that the product is safe. No question, it's a hit to your brand. It's a hit to everything you built. But I tell you what, the most humbling day was when we brought the product back into the market. I remember here in College Station, the lines of Aggie students from the freezer door all the way out into the parking lot waiting for the delivery truck. I mean, we all came back and we'd been crying. I mean, they're still buying it. I mean, this is unbelievable. There were people that were writing and said, I don't care, I'm eating it anyway. The thing is, though, you've got to stay humble. You've got to own it. And you got to get it right. And so life's going to come at you. And there are times in your own personal life, there are going to be circumstances in your life that all of a sudden you get dealt a really bad hand. And how you handle that bad hand is really going to be your defining moment. Now, here we are 10 years later, and I still see on Facebook when you have something about Bluebell, somebody will bring that story back up. You got to stay true to who you are and stay committed to that. I would say about 6 years later, we're back in all the markets. We actually had to have layoffs for the first time. We shut markets down, and we are now back in all markets. And I saw today we're going to introduce a new market, which I don't know which is. It's fun when you're retired, although you now start looking for that favorite flavor that you can't find that everybody would call you about. And you're also like, well, what's going on at the Creamery? But we're actually going to be expanding in another new market this next year. So growth is a great thing. I would say that from that, though, there's still challenges. And when I say that, you're still going to be faced with obstacles, but you've got to make sure that you're paying attention. I was watching a CBS show, morning show, getting ready for church one morning, and a restaurant in New York City was getting the award for the best restaurant in New York City for the third year in a row. And they asked the owner, how is it that you keep winning this award? And I never will forget what he said. He said, I have to change to stay who I am. And I thought, well, that's a very unusual statement. I have to change to stay who I am. And so what I took from that is, you want your culture. You want to be the little creamery from Brenham. You want to eat all you can and sell the rest. Thank you. Yes. So you don't want to lose that mystique. And when a company leaves the culture for profitability or for whatever that they think is a good change, it can really mess you up. At the same time, you cannot keep the blindfolds on to say, the world is happening. Our world today is totally different than our world even 10 years ago. But I love that. Change to stay who you are. As I wrap up my comments, I would say some of the things that I've learned are know, first off, who you are. Who are you? And if you don't know, find out who you want to be. And then stay on it. You've got to know who you are. And I say dream big. I'm a big dreamer, and I know there's TikTok comments out there that you shouldn't be dreaming. I love to dream, but if a dream turns into a vision that you cannot let go of, then you've got something. And I truly believe in my world that God has placed not only that girl in my life to get me to Baylor to Bluebell, and even all the way to where I'm here today talking to you. I believe dreaming big and lining up with God and what He has planned for you. I love the author Mark Batterson. He's one of my favorite authors, and he writes in one of his books, he said, the day you start dying is the day you stop dreaming. And ironically, the day you start living is the day you find a dream worth dying for. See, at some point in our life, we somehow quit living out of our imagination and we start living out of our memory. And that's the day we stop creating our future and we start repeating our past. That's the day we quit walking by faith and start walking by logic. But that's the day we give up on what if possibilities and end up with if only regrets. So dream big, dream big. Don't change just to change. Know why you're changing, and protect your culture by all means. I had great leadership above me, but I tell you, when I took the role of vice president of marketing and was in charge of doing ads, John Barnhill, who was before me, who's really iconic for the little girl and the cow, and eat all you can to sell the rest. The reason why Bluebell ice cream tastes so great is because Brenham, the cows think Brenham is heaven. Those were all cultural, monumental pillars that he wanted to make sure we didn't lose. So it's important to stay in tune with what's going on, but at the same time, know your dream, cultivate your dream, water your dream, fertilize your dream, live your dream, give it all you can. I will finish with this because I know my time has got to be close to being up. This letter is probably my all-time favorite. If you've heard me speak, forgive me because I usually use this. But this letter came to me, and it really did cement into me later in my career the seriousness that I should be taking what I do. It says, Dear Bluebell Creameries, I wanted to write to you and share the memory of a special man with you, Grandpa Katie Phillips. Paul passed away this morning at 86 years young. Now, look, when you're reading a letter and you see that someone has sat down to write a letter to you on the day that someone special has just passed away, obviously it grabbed my attention. He had a lifelong passion of Bluebell, and many of our family memories with Paul involve Bluebell ice cream as well. Paul had a chest freezer he kept specifically for his Bluebell, which I love this guy already. He would go to the store and buy a half gallon of every single Bluebell flavor and stock it. And he kept it in his freezer at all times. Anytime you would go visit Paul, you weren't leaving until you had some Bluebell. Whatever you wanted, or even if you didn't, he would always offer you. And if you declined, he would just disappear for a few minutes. And when he came back, he was carrying a bowl of ice cream whatever flavor he thought you needed, and it would make not only his day, and if you didn't decide on that flavor, it would be homemade vanilla. Well, over the past few years, Paul's mind was overtaken by Alzheimer's, but he remained faithful to Bluebell. This past month, as Paul's mind and body deteriorated, he wouldn't eat or drink, and he couldn't remember his love for Bluebell. But if we brought him some homemade vanilla, his eyes would sparkle and the flavors would tickle his taste buds. And for just that moment, we had our Paul back. Whew! I remember reading this letter, having to look out the window, praying nobody came in the door. I thought, this is more than just ice cream. It's making memories. It's making smiles. It's a commitment to being the best you could be, even if it's making a product or having a service. Do all you can to be who you are. Change to stay who you are. Be committed. And your journey in your culture will go for years and years to come. I really, again, appreciate you having me here today. It's great to be not only in Texas, but in College Station. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here. Thank you so much.